Sophie Ramirez clutched her diaper bag like it contained state secrets as she weaved through the bustling concourse of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Her 10-month-old daughter, Ruby, squirmed against her chest in the baby carrier, cheeks flushed and eyes puffy from lack of sleep. The red-eye flight to Boston loomed at gate C-32, and Sophie was barely holding together, physically or emotionally. Her worn sneakers squeaked faintly against the polished tile floor, betraying her frantic pace. She had just enough time to change Ruby, grab a bottle, and possibly cry in the restroom before boarding. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, competing with the low drone of announcements echoing through the terminal. Ruby let out a sudden, high-pitched wail, drawing sharp glances from nearby travelers. A sharply dressed man in a navy blazer sighed audibly, shifting his AirPods deeper into his ears. Sophie murmured soothing nonsense in Spanish and kissed the top of Ruby's head, her hands trembling slightly. Her mind ran through the stakes like a checklist she couldn't afford to forget. Overdue rent back in Austin. One job interview in Boston. That could change everything. Maxed out credit cards and no backup plan if this fell through. A few weeks ago, she'd sold her old laptop for enough gas money to drive halfway across Texas, only to realize flying would cost less than fixing her car's transmission. Her nursing school dropout status haunted her like a ghost. 2 semesters shy, one life crisis too many. But this job, this single interview at a community health clinic in Dorchester, could mean stability, benefits, daycare, a fresh start. Sophie bounced Ruby lightly and exhaled, mentally willing her daughter to settle. Gate C-32 started pre-boarding. The red eye was her shot, and no amount of dirty looks or screaming babies was going to stop her from getting on that plane. Camden Blake wasn't supposed to be in 12C. His assistant had confirmed a first-class seat, aisle, no babies nearby. But a last-minute aircraft swap and a system glitch had stranded a 35-year-old tech billionaire in row 12, smack in the middle of coach, between a snoring teenager and a woman juggling a squirming infant. He exhaled through his nose as he stowed his slim leather laptop bag. Patagonia vest over a crisp white Oxford, sleeves rolled just enough to reveal an expensive diver's watch. He was a poster child for casual power. His dark hair was neatly combed, his posture straight despite the indignity of coach. His AirPods were already in as he reviewed tomorrow's Senate briefing on his iPad. He was set to testify about Liftline's revolutionary AI that had optimized America's freight movement, but was also under fire for eliminating thousands of trucking jobs. Sophie didn't recognize him at first. To her, he was just another suit. She shifted Ruby toward the window, silently apologizing as her daughter flailed an arm and knocked Camden's tablet onto his lap. "Sorry," she whispered. He nodded once, barely looking. But then it happened. Ruby reached out, giggling, and gummed his boarding pass like it was a teething toy. Camden froze. Sophie gasped, "Oh my God, I'll wipe it down. She's teething," and for a beat, Camden looked horrified. Then something cracked. His mouth twitched upward. "Well," he said dryly, plucking the soggy cardboard from Ruby's hand, "I guess she approves of American Airlines." Sophie laughed nervously. Ruby burped. It wasn't a meet-cute, but it was a start. The aircraft rumbled down the runway, building speed like a bullet being loaded into the sky. Sophie tightened her grip on Ruby as the nose lifted and the cabin angled skyward. The lights flickered, then dimmed to a soft amber glow. A hush fell over the rows of passengers, save for the occasional cough or rustle of seatbelt. Then it began. Ruby's face scrunched into a tiny, trembling scowl before she let out a full-throated, piercing wail. Sophie flinched. So did everyone else in their row. Ruby's ears had popped. Sophie knew the signs instantly. Arch back, flailing arms, uncontrollable sobs. No amount of shushing or pacifiers was helping. Sophie dug through her bag in a panic, nearly elbowing a guy in the aisle seat. She tried a bottle. A burp. Nothing worked. Passengers turned to look, first with mild annoyance, then sharper irritation. Someone 2 rows up muttered, "Why don't they ban babies on red ice?" A woman across the aisle gave Sophie the death glare, pulling her blanket over her head with exaggerated flair. Sophie's chest burned. Her cheeks flushed hot. "I'm trying." I'm trying. I'm trying. But that didn't matter in coach at 30,000 feet. All anyone saw was a noisy mom who couldn't control her kid. The anxiety crept in fast and thick. The kind that hit her like a wave when Ruby wouldn't sleep at 3 a.m. or when she'd walk into a gas station and swipe the car with fingers crossed. Now it was back, in front of a plane full of strangers. She imagined someone recording her on their phone, tweeting about the chaotic mom in 12A. Sophie held Ruby tighter and blinked back tears. She didn't know that 2 seats over, Camden Blake had just paused his audiobook and turned to watch her with a quiet kind of curiosity. At cruising altitude, the cabin finally exhaled. Ruby, worn out from her meltdown, had drifted into a peaceful, twitchy-limbed sleep. Her tiny fingers clutched Sophie's hoodie as her breath settled into a steady rhythm. The plane hummed softly beneath them, a quiet lullaby of recycled air, engine whir, and the occasional clink of an ice-filled cup down the aisle. Sophie, running on 2 hours of sleep and emotional fumes, surrendered. Her head tipped sideways, slowly and gently, until it came to rest on something warm and firm. Camden Blake froze mid-email draft. Sophie's cheek now pressed against his shoulder. Her curls brushed his collar. Ruby had somehow twisted herself sideways, so she now half-straddled both of their laps, one sock foot resting gently on Camden's briefcase. Camden didn't move. He stared ahead like he was trying not to breathe, a deer trapped in a decidedly human situation. The faint scent of lavender baby lotion mixed with a citrus cologne, creating a strange, intimate bubble in the otherwise sterile air. A nearby passenger tried to take a discreet photo. Camden shot them a hard glance that made them think twice. He looked down again at the baby drooling lightly on his arm and the woman snoring faintly against his shoulder. This wasn't in the Senate prep packet. The bump came suddenly, just enough turbulence to jolt Sophie awake. Her head snapped upright. Her eyes blinked fast. For a second, she looked disoriented, then horrified. "Oh my God," she gasped. A dark patch of drool gleamed on Camden Blake's pristine, tailored blazer. Sophie's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Oh no. I drooled on you. I drooled on your suit. I'm so sorry. Dios mo." Camden blinked. "It's fine." No, it's not fine. That's probably like $1,000 jacket. God, I'll clean it. I'll pay for it. Or I'll Google how to get drool out of rich people fabric. I swear. She was rambling now, half in English, half in frantic Tex-Mex Spanglish. I swear she usually sleeps like a rock, except on planes. Why con to do esto? No sé en qué hacer. Camden raised a hand gently. Relax. Sophie stopped mid-sentence. He looked at the damp patch, then back at her, his mouth curved into a slow, surprisingly genuine smile. "Guess I should have gone with a drool-resistant blend," he said deadpan. "Organic fabric softener, maybe?" Sophie blinked. Then, for the first time that entire night, she laughed. Loud and unfiltered. Ruby stirred briefly, but didn't cry. The mood shifted just enough. "I owe you dry cleaning," Sophie said. "Consider it a charitable donation," Camden replied, settling back in his seat. And just like that, the awkwardness softened into something entirely new. At 3:47 a.m., the captain's voice crackled through the intercom. "Due to heavy snowfall over Boston, we've been rerouted to Denver International. We'll remain grounded until we receive clearance to continue." A collective groan rose from the cabin like steam from a boiling kettle. Sophie blinked awake, confused. Ruby was still asleep, bundled against her chest, but her own spine ached from the awkward nap she'd taken half-slump against Camden Blake. Once inside the terminal, the fluorescent lighting hit hard. Gate agents barked directions. People scrambled for outlets and information. Sophie rubbed her eyes, still clutching Ruby and her overstuffed diaper bag, trying not to panic. "Coffee?" Camden asked, already holding out a steaming cup. She stared at him. "Is it laced with dignity and sleep?" He smiled. "Just caffeine." They found a table at a mostly quiet airport coffee shop, wedged between a closed Hudson News and a flickering vending machine. Camden passed her a cup and reached into his carry-on bag. From a side pocket, He pulled out a bright blue silicone teether shaped like a hedgehog. Was going to give it to my nephew, he said. But Ruby's the current champion drooler. Sophie raised an eyebrow. You travel with emergency baby gear? I travel with gifts I forget to mail, he admitted. Don't read too much into it. Ruby woke just then, let out a soft whine, and immediately took to the teether, like it was a gold medal. Smart kid, Camden murmured. They sipped in silence for a moment, watching Ruby chew happily. So, Sophie said, her voice low, tech mogul with a heart, or just a guy in the wrong seat? Camden Blake, he replied, offering a hand. Originally of Silver Grove, Iowa. Population, cow-heavy. Mom worked 3 waitress jobs. Dad drove fertilizer trucks. I built lift line out of college dorm room and a lot of bad coffee. Sophie hesitated, then shook his hand. Sophie Ramirez. Austin, Texas. Single mom, ex-nursing student. Dropped out after my husband passed. Tried to get back in. He nodded slowly, studying her. That's a hell of a detour, he said. She shrugged. Sometimes you board the wrong plane and end up where you need to be. Camden smiled. Denver at 4 a.m. doesn't usually feel that poetic. They clinked paper cups. For the first time that night, the layover didn't feel like a setback. Sophie needed to stand, if only for a minute. She eased Ruby, now blissfully drowsy from the teether, into Camden's cautious arms, flexed her tingling legs, and rolled her shoulders. Camden adjusted the baby with the confidence of someone who'd read the manual twice. His Patagonia vest became a makeshift blanket against the terminal's over-aggressive AC. Across the seating area, a 20-something travel influencer noticed a tableau. America's hardest-edged logistics mogul, stubble-shadowed, cradling a drool-stained infant like a dad on diaper duty. The influencer's phone rose, shutter clicked, and a caption drafted itself. Delayed at DN, but just witnessed billionaire Camden Blake, soothing a stranger's baby. Maybe capitalism does have a heart. Baby bottle airplane, hashtags with a heart. By the time Sophie returned with a bottle of water, the tweet had crossed 100 retweets, then 1,000. Screens around the gate lit up as restless passengers scrolled their feeds and recognized a man sitting 10 feet away. Murmurs spread like spilled coffee. Camden's phone paused, then buzzed again in rapid succession. He glanced at the screen, PR Chief Monica. He sighed, answered, Yes, I'm aware. No, I didn't stage it. We're literally snowed in. Fine, draft something simple. Human first, corporate second. He hung up, met Sophie's puzzled gaze, and offered a rueful half-smile. Congratulations, he said softly. Your daughter just broke the internet. 2 hours after leaving Denver's snowy glow behind, the cabin lights dimmed for what everyone hoped was a final stretch. Outside, the plane threaded dark, jagged clouds above the Rocky Mountains. Without warning, the aircraft lurched, one sharp drop, then another. Luggage stowed overhead rattled. A soda can skitter down the aisle. Gasps rippled through the cabin as seatbelt signs flashed red. A second jolt sent Sophie's stomach up into her throat. The aisle lights flickered, and with a pneumatic hiss the oxygen masks deployed like yellow blossoms from the ceiling. She grabbed one, slipped it over her face, then fumbled to fit a tiny mask over Ruby, who had awakened screaming. Ruby felt hot, scary hot. Sophie pressed her lips to the baby's forehead and tasted fever. Ma'am, is she okay? A flight attendant shouted over the engines, steadying herself on a headrest. She's burning up, Sophie rasped through the mask. Do you have infant Tylenol? The attendant hurried to the forward galley and returned, wide-eyed. We're out of children's dozes. Sophie's heart pounded harder than the turbulence. Across the aisle, Camden yanked off his AirPod and flagged the attendant. I need access to the SATCOM handset now. 10 seconds later, he was in the jump seat, thumb flying across the battered keypad. Blake here. Patch me to Ops, Salt Lake City, Priority 1. Sophie watched, half terrified, half dazzled, as he rattled off coordinates and medical needs like he was calling in an airstrike. Baby, 10 months, 102 plus fever, need acetaminophen suspension, pediatric EMT kit. Wheels up in the Gulf Stream within 20. Meet us on the ground in Kansas City. We're diverting. The captain's voice crackled overhead. Ladies and gentlemen, due to weather, we'll be landing in Kansas City for fuel and safety. Camden returned, fastening his belt beside Sophie. Help is on the way, he said, voice calm despite the shaking cabin. Ruby whimpered, the mask fogging with each breath. Sophie squeezed Camden's hand. Wordless thanks in the middle of a storm that suddenly felt a little less frightening. The wheels hit the tarmac in Kansas City with a bone-deep thud. The plane taxied to a remote corner of the airport, far from the terminal. Through the oval window, Sophie spotted flashing blue lights. And, parked just beyond the runway lights, a sleek white jet with lift line logistics emblazoned in silver across its tail. Is that yours? She asked, stunned. Camden nodded, already unbuckling. A team of paramedics stepped out as stairs lowered from the side of the corporate jet. One of them, a pediatric EMT in Navy scrubs, jogged toward the aircraft with a small red case. Within minutes, the flight crew opened the main cabin door, lowering the air stairs to the cold Missouri tarmac. Ruby, flushed and fussy, clung to Sophie's chest. The EMT gently took her temperature, nodded, and opened a pre-filled dropper. Acetaminophen weight-adjusted. She'll feel better within 15. The passengers, many of whom had seen the scene unfold, burst into spontaneous applause. Someone cheered, "Give that man a raise," while another muttered, "Guess those can be useful." Sophie stood off to the side, swaying with Ruby and watching Camden direct everything. Calm, efficient, in control. No phones, no ego. Just quiet authority, steady hands. He spoke with the EMT, signed a waiver from a flight crew, and nodded a final thanks to the captain. He caught Sophie's eye. "You okay?" She nodded, eyes shining. "She'll be fine, thanks to you." He shrugged once, almost bashful. "I just had the means. You did the hard part." Sophie, used the headlines painting Cameron Blake as a cold, numbers-obsessed tech giant, saw something else on that tarmac, a man whose instincts weren't robotic at all. They were deeply, stubbornly human. The wheels kissed the runway at Logan just after 5 a.m., the sky a faint indigo wash over Boston Harbor. Sophie's ears popped as the plane braked and taxied past rows of sleeping jets. A hush fell over the cabin, part exhaustion, part relief that the long, fractured night was finally over. When the forward door opened, Camden signaled the lead flight attendant. Minutes later, Sophie found herself shepherded down the jet bridge ahead of the crowd, Ruby bundled against her chest and the teether dangling from a mitten clip. At the arrival's concourse, 2 uniformed massport agents waited beside a roped-off lane. Camden flashed a slim black badge, some airport operations pass with a holographic liftline logo, and the agent stepped aside. Sophie, disoriented, followed him through a quiet corridor lined with frosted windows that overlooked baggage claim. "Perk of too many frequent flyer miles," he murmured. "You'll be out before the rush." Sophie clutched her worn Texas driver's license, half expecting someone to question why a struggling single mom was strolling the VIP lane with a billionaire. Instead, an officer simply scanned her ID and waved her through. Ruby, finally cooler to the touch, slept heavy and limp. They paused at a corner where the fast-track corridor rejoined the regular exit. Camden checked his watch. She studied him for a moment, then blurted the secret she'd been carrying since Denver. "My husband, Gabriel, worked at the liftline hub in San Antonio," she said softly. "He lost his job when you rolled out the automation robots. Less overtime, no benefits. He took extra shifts driving rideshare to make rent, got into an accident. 3 months later, he was gone." The fluorescent lights hummed. Camden's expression shifted. First confusion, then something close to pain. "I'm sorry," he said, the word sounding heavier than a press release. "I never knew the names behind those numbers." Sophie swallowed. "I spent a year hating Liftline and anyone who ran it. Tonight messed with that narrative." Ruby stirred, sighing against Sophie's hoodie. "I can't fix the past," Camden added, quiet but firm. "But if I can help with your future, say the word." Their eyes met in the sterile hallway, hers tired yet resolute, his carrying the weight of unintended consequences. No handshake sealed it, no dramatic music swelled. Just a silent exchange. Her grief acknowledged, his guilt accepted, and the fragile start of something that felt a lot like forgiveness. The sliding glass doors of Terminal B parted, and the quiet VIP corridor emptied Sophie and Camden into a wall of light. Camera flashes stuttered like fireworks in the dawn haze. Microphones thrust forward. Voices overlapped. Mr. Blake, over here. Who's the baby? Is this the CEO with a heart from Twitter? Sophie froze, shielding Ruby's sleepy face. Camden stepped instinctively between her and the press pack, hand up in a polite, "Hold on." The influencer's tweet had snowballed overnight. CNN ran on the crawl. TikTok stitched it into soft piano montages, and Morning Joe teased a segment. Billionaire baby whisper? A reporter from the Boston Globe shouted a question that sliced through the chatter. Is Liftline using this as image rehab before your Senate hearing, Mr. Blake? Camden's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice even. No rehab, just responsibility. He glanced back at Sophie, then faced a cluster of lenses. Early this morning, my team established the Ruby Fund, a $25 million scholarship program dedicated to single parents pursuing nursing degrees across the United States. A collective gasp. Pens scrambled. Phones tilted for live streams. Full tuition, childcare stipends, and relocation grants, he added. Because no parent should choose between feeding a child and finishing a degree. Flashbulbs flared brighter. Sophie felt her throat constrict. Tears threatened, but she blinked them away. Isn't that convenient timing? A skeptical voice pressed. Critics say you're buying goodwill. Goodwill can't be bought, Cameron replied, calm but flinty. It's earned one family at a time. He gestured toward Sophie. If you're looking for a headline, spell her name right. Sophie Ramirez. She's why the fund exists. Reporters jotted, some nodding, others arching brows. Camden guided Sophie toward a waiting car, flashes still popping like distant thunder. Behind them, the news cycle whirred into motion, already debating motives, but broadcasting the promise all the same. 6 months later, Boston's spring air buzzed with the scent of lilacs and late rain. The Ruby Fund had become national news, and Sophie Ramirez was its brightest first star. Dressed in scrubs and a BC student badge, she breezed to the final question of her pharmacology exam, heart-pounding in a good way this time. She'd scored top marks all semester. Ruby, now walking with that adorable, chaotic wobble, spent her weekdays at campus-provided daycare. Rent was paid. Credit cards were down to double digits. Hope didn't feel theoretical anymore. Twice a week, Sophie shadowed nurses at Liftline's new on-site employee health clinic, a sleek blend of innovation and actual care. They treated truckers with back pain, desk workers with migraines, and warehouse staff with burnout. Here, the automation Camden once championed was offset by intentional investment in human beings. On a quiet Tuesday, she walked into the break room to find a tall man in jeans and a red Sox cap fiddling with the new telehealth kiosk. He glanced up and grinned. User interface needs work, Camden said, holding up a tablet. Tried to schedule a flu shot and got a dental consultant instead. Sophie chuckled, grabbing her coffee from a Keurig. Beta software. Be nice. He accepted the correction. How's pharmacology? Aced it. Thanks for asking, she said, not without pride. They sat for 10 minutes in comfortable silence, sipping from mismatched mugs. Their bond had never turned romantic. It didn't need to. It was built on shared nights, lived empathy, and the unglamorous grind of forward momentum. Ruby still chewing on hedgehogs? He asked. She upgraded to dinosaurs. Sophie smiled. With glitter. Camden tipped his hat, rising. Tell her she's got taste. As he walked off to another anonymous kiosk test, Sophie watched him go. Not as a billionaire, not as a man who'd unknowingly altered her life twice, but as someone who showed up. Sometimes that was the most extraordinary thing of all. On a bright May morning, 7-year-old Ruby Ramirez Blake, still tiny, still fearless, adjusts her sparkly headband and squares her shoulders in front of her second-grade class. She clears her throat and clicks the first slide of her project, The Night We Borrowed a Shoulder. A photo fills the screen, an airplane row, a sleeping baby, a drool-stained Patagonia vest. Giggles ripple through the room. Ruby lifts her chin. This is Camden Blake. He's my mom's friend. One time, Mommy and I were stuck on a plane and, well, I borrowed his shoulder. It changed a lot of stuff. Her classmates lean in, spellbound by the idea that a billionaire once smelled like baby spit. The next slide flashes an infographic of the Ruby Fund. 1,200 single-parent nursing scholars in 6 years. 840 graduates already licensed RNs. 220 clinics, urban, rural, tribal, filling the gaping holes in America's nursing shortage. Ruby's pointer taps each number with practiced pride. Mom says big things grow from small kindnesses, like sunflowers from seeds. She clicks again to show newspaper headlines. Ruby Fund grads boost ICU staffing. ER wait times fall in Appalachia. Little faces around the room widen. Their world suddenly feels larger. That evening, Boston College's commencement arena thrums with trumpets and restless families. Sophie, cap tassel trembling, walks across the stage to accept her long-deferred Bachelor of Science in Nursing, magna cum laude. Cameras flash. Camden claps from a discreet seat in the mezzanine, pride shining but private. Afterwards, Sophie finds a quiet corner on the lawn where Ruby has finally crashed, mouth open, sticky cheeks rosy from excitement. The girl's head rests against Sophie's shoulder, still the safest place she knows. Around them, graduates in teal gowns laugh and pose for selfies. Beyond the campus trees, planes rise one by one into the lilac dusk, their silver bellies catching the last orange fire of sunset. Sophie kisses the crown of Ruby's hair, closes her eyes, and listens. Jet engines fading northwest, a distant gull, the flutter of program pages in the breeze. Shoulders borrowed, shoulders offered. The circle is complete, but the flight continues. Higher, kinder, wide enough for anyone who needs a place to rest.